Thank you all for coming tonight to celebrate with us virtually. My name is Karina Reynolds. I am the Executive Director of Center for Book Arts, and I am coming to you live from CBA tonight. Normally, our exhibition openings are packed to the brim with artists and collectors and all other types of people from across New York City. But because of the current safety precautions that we have to take, we are coming to you virtually, so thank you for joining us. So in a moment, you are about to get a first glimpse of our 3 new exhibitions: Americans Looking In, Makes Reads by Morcos and Construction Site by Viviane Rombaldi Seppey. It has not gone unnoticed that these 3 exhibitions are situated within the midst of several turning points that will and have already changed the course of society, to be marked in US history. For example, the 2020 election year, which is, the election is quickly coming up, a global pandemic, which is why we're coming to you remotely, and the national uprisings against systematic racism and police violence in the US. We are also not under any illusion that the US is alone in this time. We are suffering internationally. And the issues that we are experiencing here are affecting people all over the globe. In particular, our hearts go out to those whose family and friends were affected by the recent bombing in Beirut. So in a time when virtual contact has become the norm, the normal way of interacting, the book has been able to defy some of these limitations imposed upon us. It provides an intimate form of communication, even as we remain at a safe distance. In a way, books are portals of access, and artist books are the facilitators for some of the most intimate conversations between the viewer and an artist. In a moment, you will be joined by curators Emilie Ahern and Sherri Littlefield as they give you a brief tour of the exhibition Americans Looking In. Then you will hear from designers John Key and Wael Morcos. Feel free to wave hello. Hello. Who will take you through their exhibition Makes Reads. And then finally, you will hear from Viviane Rombaldi Seppey, and she'll give you a brief tour of her exhibition Construction Site. We will then be joined by Isabel Chang. Isabel, go ahead and wave hello. She has been doing an amazing job helping the Center for Book Arts with graphic design, and she's going to talk a little bit about some of the design work that she has done for some of the exhibitions that you'll be seeing tonight. So in just a moment, we will be joined in the main gallery by, as I said, Emilie, Sherri. But first, I'd like to thank our funders, the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, the New York State Council on the Arts, and the National Endowment for the Arts. Thank you for your support in making this exhibition possible, or all 3 of these exhibitions possible. I would also like to express my deep gratitude for the staff and the board at the Center for Book Arts for their ongoing support and the hard work that has made these exhibitions possible. So I invite you to take a moment as you follow the curators and artists tonight through their exhibitions to think about the form of the book as a portal through which we can all share our most intimate views about what is going on in the world around us. And now I'm going to pass you off to curators Emilie Ahern and Sherri Littlefield in the main gallery.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Sherri Littlefield. I'm Emilie Ahern. This is Americans Looking In. Yeah, first and foremost, I want to thank Jenna and Karina and everyone at the Center for Book Arts for having us curate the show. We want to thank our artists, everyone who supported us. So, this is our show, Americans Looking In. And it's been a 2-year project in the making. We spent a lot of time researching and curating this show. The exhibition is loosely based on Robert Frank's The Americans, which really showed what he saw America like through the eyes of an immigrant. What Emilie and I did that was a little different is we asked Americans, to look in on other Americans. The work that is in this exhibition will highlight American humor, a sense of place, some narratives, but we all wanted it to be very American.
Yeah, so along that vein, what we ended up doing and approaching this exhibition was reaching out to our friends, the artists who you're seeing here, and asking them, you know, what does it mean to be an American, and what does an American look like? So what led us down, or the path that we came across that through that question led to the collection that you see here today. As you know, the space will be open via appointment, so we will give you a sneak peek to just a few of the pieces that you can see on site, and we'll start with the sense of place.
Yeah. We also want to mention, as Karina said, we had no idea 2 years ago, like the movement that would have occurred in the last 2 years. So, you know, what a time for this exhibition. Americans are really looking in on one another right now. So this piece is by renowned artist Arlene Rush. She has been creating work for over 30 years. She does everything from photography to sculpture. This was actually a conceptual piece that we brought to life. And this is based within the realm of her Evidence of Being series, this piece specifically showing that she was here. Arlene has had the same studio space in Chelsea for nearly 30 years. As you can imagine, everything around her has changed. This yellow area, which is Follow the Yellow Brick Road, is a site-specific installation. It shows the gallery guide, which is dating back to 1997 here, up until 2009. You can see all the galleries that have remained, many which have closed, many which have moved, and many which have combined with one another. But this photograph that's in there shows an area around her studio, and it's a bunch of images that are photoshopped together. You can see the High Line that has come up there, you know, some different vehicles in there. So it's all about a sense of place and how she's been here as an American, making it in New York City as a female artist. So some other themes that we have, Emilie can speak about here.
So as an example of a piece really delving into narrative, we have Dixie Compass, which was created by artist Key Francis, who's born and raised in the South. And this artwork specifically deals with storytelling from Key Francis' perspective. So his practice, or within his practice, he writes, prints, and builds all the pieces that he makes. And so this is a beautiful example of that. This one specifically, again, has stories that are unique to the South and specific to the South. And something that he says about his artwork is that I find really intriguing, and I like his spin on it, is that nothing is ever what it seems in the South. So we were really pleased to be able to include this highly sculptural, dynamic book.
Of course, we're at the Center for Book Art, so we had to have some books in here. This is Lost 3, which is from one of my personal favorite artists, Chris Graves. In addition to being an incredible artist, Chris Graves is a publisher. And the Lost series, it features monographs by photographers who are photographing a place that they've either lived for a while or have grown up in. So inside of these, there's actually 8 books from 8 different photographers. Each one is really beautiful, as you can see. So just to look through, there's just a lot of photographs that you can see in there. As Karina mentioned, it's really important to have like the intimacy of a book. It's not the same as a photograph. And I think the Lost series is extremely successful in that. You can really have all the time you want and see these different areas of where people may have grown up, areas that are not, you know, as commonly photographed as like New York or Los Angeles, many of which are America, many of which show a different side to what Americans look like. So Emilie also has.
The last piece we'll be sharing with you this evening is another book that really takes a humorous approach to what it means to be an American living in America. This is a handmade book that was letterpress printed and bound by Uriel Sidor, who's originally from Israel and was living and practicing his work here in New York City. And he actually took this Hebrew font, typeface, and printed here on site at the Center for Book Arts this series of fun explorations of what America means. So he goes through and makes his own alphabet and says, for example, Aleph is for America, or exploring what a hamburger is, and making these beautiful illustrations using type and text only in this exploration to make some humor. It also isn't lost on me that it's very humorous that I don't have direct access to the humor in this book because I do not read Hebrew. So I just like the layers here in this piece. It's not only beautiful, but has just such great layers of intimacy involved in it, all with humor. So this was a brief selection of the artworks that you can find here in the space. We invite you all to make an appointment if you can, and if you live here in the city or are visiting, to come explore these artworks and learn a little bit more about what it means to be an American today.
Great. Thank you all so much.
And now we're going to pass it off to John Key and Wael Morcos so they can tell you a little bit about their exhibition.
Awesome. Thank you so much to Karina and Jenna for having us and hosting this show and this opportunity. I'm John Key.
I'm Wael Morcos.
And together we make up the design duo Morcos Key, which is a Brooklyn-based design studio that focuses on arts and cultural institutions and branding and typography work. So the exhibition that we are presenting today in this space is called Makes Reads, which is a collection of 20 design books that we actually designed from our studio. Some things were personal practice projects, some things are magazines, some things are type specimens, some things are art books, and some things are just it's kind of a spectrum of different projects. And then we have 20 books that is in our personal library that inspire us, that we've been reading. Also, these books are books that have been made by our friends. And I think this idea of being a practicing graphic designer and this cyclical relationship between making and reading and making is what we're trying to show a little bit about our studio and who we are and our experiences. So we can dive into a few of the books. The first book is Graphic, Arabic, and Brando Specimen, type specimen.
Thank you. These are very special two books that are actually type specimens, which are in itself is a curious design object because type specimens are designed to only be more like a promotional item for a specific typeface. And it's usually as a marketing object to help the foundries sell their typefaces. I'm originally from Lebanon, and as a graphic design studio dealing with clients in the Middle East and with Middle Eastern culture, it's very important for us to invest in tools that help other designers also communicate. Surprisingly, most cultures from the Middle East are extremely rich in their visual adaptation and expression, especially when it comes to Arabic calligraphy. However, Arabic script has had a very contentious relationship with technology. Every time new printing methods have been developed, they've been designed with the Latin script's detached letters in mind. And luckily, things are changing, and the advancement of digital software have allowed Arabic fonts to catch up with technology. And we're witnessing a renaissance of Arabic typography where designers like our studio are exploring this rich heritage and working into translating its characteristics into a functional digital space. So as a studio, we've worked with many type foundries in the past, like Commercial Type and Bold Monday, to kind of translate some of their classic Latin typefaces into Arabic fonts. And we call it a matchmaking exercise, which in itself is a very elastic expression. And every type designer or graphic designer has their own methodology for approaching what does that mean. But we approach it from a formal level, but also more importantly, from a functional level. So we look at the way the Latin typeface works, and we try to translate it into a system that is inherently Arabic, but can also operate in the same way. The interesting part about this kind of approach is that we as a studio invest back with these funds into our own practice, and they become tools in our arsenal as designers.
Yeah, I love it. So the next books that we're going to talk about is actually the 10th magazine. So the 10th magazine was actually one of the first editorial projects that we completed when we moved to New York City. And the 10th was founded by Kari Sepp, and who is the editor-in-chief of the magazine. And the 10th really is a contemporary fashion and lifestyle journal, and interrogates the myth of the monolithic Black community, specifically the media's and pop culture's caricature of queer Black people, by offering vast perspectives, narratives about and by Black, queer, and trans people of color. The collaboration with the 10th has always been invaluable educational experience and important for our growth as a studio. We have met with and worked with so many photographers like Marcus Branch, Camilio, Harvey Jackson, and also so many artists and writers in our community. And so the 10th for us is just such an exciting canvas that we get to really express, again, the variations and the beauties of what it means to be a queer Black person today. So there's, I mean, I love it. I mean, there's just this issue specifically, the romantics issue, was looking at the kind of modern day queer Black romantic and speaking to 18th century, 19th century concepts of this idea of romanticism in terms of art, in terms of lifestyle, in terms of making, and this idea of returning to nature, but also existing purely and fully as an artist and owning and honing in your voice. And so this is really thinking about modern day contemporary interpretations of that with Black queer people. And there's artwork. Yes. And so the last book that we're going to talk about with this side of, in terms of work that we've made, is the 2 book.
This is the kind of a portfolio of our work. Our studio is very young. We're about 3.5 years old almost. But when we hit the 2-year mark, we decided to create some sort of open process explosion of visuals of the work that we've done since this founding of our studio. So we kind of wanted to, because most of our work is present on our website in its final form in a ready-made slide for people to look at and observe. But we wanted to show a lot of these sketches and processes and approaches that are put in practice every time we approach a project. And we wanted to include also self-initiated project that our studio does. So it becomes more like a visual brainstorming and process put on paper, captured between the end sheets of a book.
Yeah, and like Wael said, I think it also becomes a time capsule and an archive for ourselves as well, and something that we can look back in terms of the where we started, and you know, hopefully in 10 years from now, you know, and compare it to where we are. But yeah, I mean, it's a great thing, and hopefully people can dig in and break the spine of it. And all the books are meant to be handled at the exhibition, so we, you know, we're happy for people to dig in and to enjoy and to kind of, you know, visually digest what we are doing. So this is, again, this wall is 20 books that, again, are books that we made from our studio, personal practice work, things before our actual formal creation of our studio. And then the other side of the exhibition, which Jenna is killing, yes, this runway, it would lead us to the other 20 sides, which is the reads. And again, these are 20 books that have been done by collaborators, that have been done by friends, things that we consume in terms of inspiration, artists that we admire, and yeah, just again, a range of types of mediums, from publications to magazines to art books to journals. Yeah, and so we're gonna start with Indigenous Woman. So this is an amazing art project and feat by Martin Gutierrez. And it is a powerful use of the editorial container to reconstruct and project your own personal narrative. So I'm gonna read a little bit of the words that she said in terms of talking about this. This is not a magazine about fashion, lifestyle, or celebrity. Indigenous Woman is an independent art publication dedicated to the celebration of Mayan and Indian heritage, the navigation of contemporary indigeneity, and the ever-evolving self-image. It is a vision, an overture, a provocation. The word indigenous here is used to refer to native cultures from a particular region, but also as a synonym for the natural and the innate. And to me, I mean, I don't know if you're not familiar with this artist's work, Martine was just at the Venice Biennale this past year, showing large photographs of her in these constructed kind of environments and sets. And all of her work really deals with her intersection of identity as an Indigenous woman, as a trans woman, as a woman who lives in America, and using pop culture, fashion, and photography editorial frames to critique herself, but also critique the gazes of her and her body. It's really beautiful. So this is actually originally in a show at a gallery in New York a couple of years ago, and I was lucky to be able to snatch a beautiful copy.
And I think the last book we're gonna look at,
No, we have two more.
we have two more. The another, the one with a face illustration on it. Yes. I think any artist or designer never operates in vacuum, and especially graphic designers, it's important for them to react to a visual culture that's around them. This is probably one of the only graphic design magazine from the Arab world to the Arab world and done in Arabic. And it's entirely written, illustrated, and designed by one person. His name is Muhyiddin Labad, who was born in the 1940s and passed away about 10 years ago. He's an Egyptian illustrator, writer, designer, and caricaturist. He spent his life working with publication houses in Egypt and other places in the Middle East. And this is volume 2 of this magazine called Nazar, which means vision. And it's really interesting because he talks about all sorts of topics related to visual culture, from politics to semiotics to alphabets to symbols and logos and illustrations. And he tells the story of the complex narratives around these objects and their significance, and he unpacks them culturally. It's really a unique object. And a couple of years ago, when I knew one of my friends was going to be in Egypt, where a few of these books remained available, I made sure they kept me a couple of volumes from this magazine. It's really a very special book. And if you look back at the cover, the illustration on the cover is actually a caricature of the artist himself. That's an illustration of, it's a self-portrait.
Yes. And the last book that we're going to talk about is Fearless. Yes, that one. So Jeff Shanks' Fearless, designed by Isometric, which is an amazing graphic design studio based in Brooklyn. The founders are Andy Chan and Vikas Jawad. So Fearless, though, this book that their studio design, is a photographic journal documenting 200 out and proud LGBTQ student athletes. Personally, Andy Chan and Vikas have been such great mentors for us, and their studio specifically investigates the intersections of design, photography, and architecture through narrative forward projects. Fearless is an object sharing the physical and emotional journey of these students. The design punctuates the strength exhibited by these individuals with cascading quotes like that and jutting typography like that, reaffirming it's okay to stand out from the team. And I just love this project. I think it's really beautiful in terms of how the narrative is intertwined with the photographs, and this kind of personal narrative also intertwined with these narratives of other students. So yeah, I mean, it's a really beautiful, dense book.
So these are like 8 out of the 40 books in this exhibit of 2 parts. So I think it will be really exciting for people to be able to see them live, to book a visit to the Center of the Book Arts and check them and flip through them and experience the environment or the universe that we live in as a studio, what we draw from, and the kind of things that we create.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, John and Wael. That was amazing. Yeah, I really encourage everyone to come back and thumb through those books. They're absolutely fantastic. In fact, I just read a really great review of one of your recent books in the Brooklyn Rail. So I think that there's something for you guys to discover there. Now I'm going to pass it off to Viviane Rombaldi, Seppey.
Thank you for joining. I particularly want to thank the Center for Book Art and also the Band Center for Art and Creativity for their support in the making of this project. So let me introduce you to construction site. The beginning of the project is the fascinating story of my grandfather, who at age 15 had to find a way to live and had no other choice than walk in northern Italy towards Switzerland. He came to the construction of the Simplon tunnels that was around 1905 and began to work there. He worked for several years in a construction site and then settled in Switzerland. So I had this very interesting story of a migrant echoing the migration story of today. And I thought about book, but I am not a writer. So I am a visual artist. I thought of taking the idea of constructing a book with the idea of constructing a life in another place. So my first piece is Way Home that you can see now. It's composed of 15 boxes that have the shape of a brick, paralleling the idea of a brick wall, building a wall to have a home. And engraved are words connecting with the idea of construction, but also migration. So you have words like uproot, space, inside, soil, shape, ground, floor. And in these boxes, you found a plumb line. The plumb line is made with a map. The plumb line, the plumb line is made with a map and take the shape of a kind of a small book too. Each map comes from my father, yes, and so I was interested in the idea that to construct a wall, it has to be straight, otherwise it falls apart, a little like the migrant has to construct a new life and adapt to the surrounding to try to fit in. And then I had my wall and my bricks, but I had to think of a plan. So I did homes, which is on the other side of the wall. To do this piece, I took what I had left from the cutting of the boxes from the piece Way Home. And they refer to architectural blueprint or shape or land or territory. And then on the paper, the handmade paper, I embossed the words that are taken from the boxes. So within my book construction, I was making other books. And then we can see more traditional artist book. So home, that's one stitch at a time. This piece is connecting to my Italian mother, who also moved to Switzerland to find work after World War II. And with her, I always, she told me story and she taught me to stitch and knit. And in this book, we don't see really, but there is a lot of sewing relating to the words in the book. Another book is Homework, thinking about the tradesman and his pencil and the way he has to build his house. And again, find a way to fit in society. And so always this idea of every day is a construction, an effort to build a life. And then I have two pieces which are maps, transform maps. So there are two Swiss topographical maps. One is based on the horizon line. So I was thinking of everybody looking for new horizon, but sometimes you have to dig between the layers to find this new horizon. And the other piece is based on the Swiss flag, but it's an open Swiss flag. And it's a kind of hope for people from all origin to be able to still enter a country to find work and a way to live in. So I hope you can come and see the work. It has a lot of details, hard to see on internet. And if you want to meet me, just contact the gallery and I would be happy to be there. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Viviane. That was lovely. And now we are going to hear from Isabel.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Karina. Thank you, Jenna, for putting this on tonight. I know it must be very, very difficult to do something like this in these times, and thanks to presenters. Viviane, I saw that you made the exhibit, or partly in Banff, Canada, and that's actually where I'm from. And so I'm just overjoyed to see the Banff Center make an appearance at the Center for Book Arts. So like Karina mentioned, I'm just here to talk about the graphic design that happens at the center, specifically the exhibition catalogs and the brochures. I suppose there's like a central conundrum when it comes to designing exhibition catalogs, and that is, how do you represent and honor artists or artist without trying to be the artist? So you don't want to say, hi, John. You don't want to say the same thing twice. You don't want to recreate the exhibit, because that would be a kind of like mimicry. But at the same time, you don't want to speak louder than the exhibit and the books contain within it. So Karina and Jen and I, over the past couple of years, have been trying to strike this balance of honoring the artist without trying to be the artist, and using paper, using binding, using printing as a means of interpreting the exhibit and pushing through and creating new layers of meaning, which I think speaks to the central crux of the Center for Book Arts, in that using the book as an object to interpret the world around us. And so I guess I'll talk about the Makes and Reads exhibit brochure, which I've been working on in collaboration with John and Wael and Jenna. And we talked a lot, or we had a discovery meeting with John and Wael, and the through line that came through to me in speaking to them was that the books in the exhibit, in both the Makes and the Reads, exist in this like universe of thought. And that there's no discrete boundary between the books that they read and the books that they make. The two are, making and reading are twin phenomenon that inform one another. And so I wanted to create a catalog that really spoke to this nature of this dialogue that happens between making and reading. And unfortunately, we don't have the brochures printed. I'm going to the center tomorrow to print them, but I can share my screen. Can everyone see this, I hope? Oh, I can't go full screen. So the brochure rests on the use of lightweight paper that shows through, so the ink will show through the paper. And when I was organizing the content, at first I was like, how do I translate that making and reading on these twin phenomenon? And having them on separate pages felt like I was separating these, or distancing these two activities that are so deeply intertwined. And so I thought that, again, I really wish that we had an actual physical copy, but for the Makes page, for example, on the opposite side of the page is the Reads. And so I wanted, again, to convey that making and reading happen at the same time, simultaneously, and are two sides of the same coin. And when you're reading the Makes page, for example, the shadows and the outlines and the echoes of the Reads will show through. Yeah, I hope, here, I'll stop sharing. I hope that makes sense. It's hard to describe the actual outcome of it without having it here in front of me.
Thank you so much, Isabel. It was really wonderful to hear you talk about the way you've been thinking about design, and it has been really wonderful to work with you since you started helping out at Center for Book Arts. And so both me and Jenna and all of the staff really want to say thank you for your work. And I know that John and Wael really enjoyed working with you as well.
Oh, thanks.
So quickly, I do want to do a quick plug. Oh, look, you have a round of applause there. A quick plug for the exhibition catalog for Americans Looking In. We have copies available on our website and our web shop. So go ahead and check that out there. It's a great way to support Center for Book Arts as well as the exhibition. And the brochures are free. So if you come into the Center for Book Arts to view our exhibition, you can pick one of those up, one of the brochures that Isabel has just been describing to you. So with that, I want to say thank you to everyone for tuning in with us tonight. And just to say thank you. And we hope to see you soon at the Center for Book Arts. All right, have a great night, everyone.
Thank you. Bye. Thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you, Karina. This is very nice, very good.